Hi, today I am here with Christian contemporary romance author Sara Beth Williams. Welcome, Sara. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm
Yeah.
really excited.
You know what? I just realized when we were connecting that, I came from Northern California. Now we're in Tennessee, and you're living in Northern California, right?
Yeah, I live in Northern California. I've traveled a lot throughout California, and it factors a lot into most of my books, actually.
Does it? So the placing. So what part of Northern California are you living in?
I'm in Sacramento County.
Okay. Okay. I went to Sac State, believe it or not. So years
Yeah,
ago.
I did a year at Sac State, and and then I went to junior college before that, and then I graduated from Fresno Pacific University
And what was your
down
degree?
south. I did a liberal studies degree. So I started writing when I was a kid in fifth, sixth, seventh grade, and I wrote a lot of copycat stories and poetry and different things. And I wrote a book in 2000, when I was like graduated high school around that time, and then I set it aside because I didn't know what genre I wanted to write in, and had barely gotten into any Christian fiction at that time in the early 2000s, and so I wasn't sure what to do with it because I definitely didn't want to write contemporary romance for the general market
Right.
because it was super smutty, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I definitely did not want to do that. And then after I went to college for a while, got married in 2008, I picked up the story again. And after I had started reading more Christian fiction, Christian romance, and historical Christian fiction, and I started reading specifically um, Haley Bridegroom, and I love Haley's work so much.
Say her name again. You say it again, Haley.
I always mess up her last name, but she wrote several stories in the Jewel series,
Okay.
and a lot of contemporary romance, and romantic suspense, and so she really inspired me a lot. Um, and I constantly mess up her last name. I apologize.
No, say I
Uh,
didn't catch it actually. I didn't catch you said. Haley.
Let me look up because I do not want to mess it up.
Well, it's okay. People mess my name up all the time. It's all good. Not all of us have a simple last name like Williams.
Yeah, that's my husband. My maiden name is Albee, which is and yes, I am related to the playwright of Edward Albee.
Wow.
Which is exciting. When I found that out, I was pretty excited actually
Were
to be
you?
related to a playwright. So Haley Bridgman is my inspiration for beginning writing, and she's written a lot of books in the last 10 years. I started reading her first series, and I said, oh my gosh, I can do this. This is exactly what I want to write. So that's when I started working on my first book around 2014 or so, like that. So,
Okay. And then where did you go from there? Did you are you traditionally published, indie published?
so in 2014, I began working with that manuscript that I had kind of put aside for 10 years, and I started working on that, and then pitched it to different places. My original thought was to do traditional publishing. I found a little press, what they call a digital first publishing, and it's kind of like a hybrid. It's a traditional publishing house in terms of that they cover all the editing and the cover and that kind of thing. But I had to do a lot of my own marketing. So I've been learning a lot in the last several years. So I pitched it to them in different places as well, but that's the one that landed me a contract. And so then I published my first contemporary Christian romance novel, When Hearts Collide, in 2018. And then the second one, 2019, and the third one, 2021. And then I was kind of, I had actually in that time frame from 2018 throughout the entire time frame, there was 6 deaths in my immediate family
Oh my word.
and my husband's. It was a lot, a very difficult time period. So what happened was, as I had began writing the first book, I had began writing the second and third kind of organically. They kind of developed organically as I wrote, different characters coming out, like side characters wanting their own story. And so I really believe that that's how I kind of am like a hybrid in terms of plotting and pantsing, as they say.
Yeah.
And so I do like plotting more now that I've been writing longer. But the more that you write, the longer that I sit and write for like past the 2 hour mark, then ideas start coming a lot faster. So I have to sit for at least 2 hours and write consistently for ideas to just come and come and come. And so then that's how I developed the second and third book. So I kind of wrote them all at the same sort of time. And so releasing them wasn't as hard because I already had them kind of outlined and ready to go.
So
I just had to go through the
you're not
editing
working on
process.
just specifically one book at a time. You've got several projects that you're working on in your mind.
I've always been working on like 5 or 6 projects at the same
Wow.
time. It's crazy. I've been working on I usually work on multiple at the same time unless I have a deadline, which is what I had with this small company called Anaya Press. And so that's where it's kind of a traditional, like I said, it's kind of a traditional publishing format. But they don't do a print run. So they do print on demand. So they don't print like a bunch of copies and then send them to you. You have to kind of order them wholesale. So it's a little bit different, but it's similar and it's a little more flexible. It's a little faster. It takes about 9 months to 12 months to get a book out through the process of
Right.
editing and cover and all that. And so that's the first 3 books I did that. And then I was kind of burned out because of like life and putting out a whole series and marketing that and just all of the things that were happening was really difficult for me for those several years. And in 2021, after I had released Anchor My Heart, my dad passed away 6 months later, roughly. So it was really difficult, to get back into things. I had a bunch of stories already like kind of in progress as well. So I wrote a lot before he passed away, but then it was just like really hard to get back into it. So I was pleasantly surprised to be finaling in the Salo Awards. That was exciting. And that happened in the next year in the spring because they always take the books that happened the year before.
Right.
So in 2022. So that was exciting. Um I went to the conference for the Sale Awards and that was exciting.
The Blue Ridge Christian
Yeah.
Writer. Yeah. Yeah. That's quite a ways to go from California.
Yeah, I took a direct flight because it's so funny story. I haven't flown since 2001 and I flew before September 11th, 2001. So I hadn't flown since 2011. So I'm sorry, I haven't flown since 9/11. So I was kind of freaking out. So I took a direct flight and it was long, but it was good. I'm glad I didn't have to transfer flights.
Yeah. Okay. So you have a family, right? You have children?
Yeah, so I have 2 daughters and we had 2 cats, or we had 2 dogs and now we have 2 cats. And I have a 12-year-old daughter and I have an 8-year-old daughter, 6th grade and 3rd grade. And the 12-year-old daughter is as tall as I am now. and bigger feet than me. So it's been a fun year watching her surpass
So
me.
but you're also working. I know you're substitute teaching. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been in the education field for 10 years in different capacities. So I worked as a teacher assistant, and then I went recently, a couple years ago, I went back to subbing. This year I was subbing, and I worked as a TK teacher for about 6 months, taking over for a teacher temporarily. And so that was exciting, working in a class
So
for an extended time. Go ahead.
where do you find the time with two children and working as much as you do? Where do you find the time to write? What does your typical writing week look like for you?
It's actually changed a lot over the years. I used to write at night, and from like 9 to 12 was typically what I would do for like many years. And then I started working like longer hours, just different because I've been working in different positions in education. So the longer hours make it really hard to work. 'Cause I'm tired.
Well, I could imagine
Um,
you must get by 9
so
o'clock at night.
yeah, so I'm getting older, so it's a lot harder to stay up till midnight than it used to be. I remember when in 2020 and 2021, I wrote two different books, and even I think in 2022, I wrote several books, like, and I would write them all in a rush, and then I would be exhausted because I would be catching up on like not sleeping. So it's exhausting, but typically now it's harder to get down to writing new material. I have a lot of works in progress right now that I want to try to get out to the public. I currently, in August 2023, I independently published a book called No Matter How Far, and that was exciting. It's part of a multi-author collection, a small town romance collection. It's really been so fun. So I've kind of gotten that series out already kind of worked on. So it's not as hard right now because I'm not writing anything brand new. To write something brand new for me takes like I need to go somewhere by myself and sit down for several hours and write. So it's a lot harder now. I have to get away on a weekend or something. And then when I went a couple years ago, I went back to subbing after I had been working as a teacher assistant and different things like that. So then that year, 2022, 2023, the 2022-2023 school year, I had a lot more time because subbing is very flexible.
Right.
And I wrote a lot during that year because I had a lot more time by myself in the daytime. So I kind of have, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're substituting now, is that correct, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, so I had been working in a TK class for 6 months, and that was long, but it was a very exciting. And now that temporary situation has resolved itself, so I am back to subbing, which is a lot less time consuming. I'm also a freelance writer for a local newspaper, so I'm doing more of that. I began that about almost 2 years ago. I think one of the reasons I picked that up too was because I was kind of like burned out on novel writing and I wanted to try something different. I worked in my college newspaper a long time ago, so I picked up this little freelancing job and it's been really fun. So I'm doing more of that and more catching up on my works in progress right now. I have a second book coming out in the Trinity Lakes romance series. That one's going to be coming out in June. And then a third one coming out in 2025. And then I have other plans for this year and next year with the current works in progress that I already have right now.
Wow. So I can't even imagine juggling that many characters and plot lines and all that at one time. Do you find that you ever bleed them together? Like you forget who you're writing about and you're on the wrong story?
That is actually not a problem I've had. The problem I've had in working on multiple projects is writing the same kind of plot sequences or the same kind of events or the same kind of like situations in multiple books. And so I've had to kind of go back and be like, oh, okay, that I already did this ice skating scene like 4 times. Maybe I should, you know,
Change it up.
add some variety into. So, and I think a lot of authors do that where they have their favorite types of scenes and situations and sequences of especially romantic suspense of plot that they go through. And so I'm trying to vary it up a little bit from series to series and not have the same type of situations happening. Character wise, I've been pretty good about keeping them separated. I'm pretty organized when it comes to my writing. It's all organized into folders, and I have usually I make what they would call maybe a story Bible for a series. My series have not been that long. I've only had 3 books in each one so far.
And how
So it
long is
hasn't been that.
typically, how long in words, like are your books typically 75,000, 90,000 words?
So I used to write longer books. My first one was like 80,000. My second one was shorter, 65. My third one was a little longer. And now I've been writing shorter books. This one that just came out in August, no matter how far, is probably around 60,000 or so, which is the shortest one I've written besides a novella that I hope to put out this year as well. But I never thought I'm usually a very wordy person. And so I usually write a lot longer stories. And then in 2020, my friend Lisa Renee ran a contest or a short story contest. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it under the word cap that you have, but I'll try. And it was really fun. It was a nice challenge. I like to find challenges, new things, because I love writing. And so any type of writing challenge is really fun for me to try something new. And so I did the short story right at the mark, like at the cutoff of word count, which I think she had put 7,500 as a word count, which is really short. If so, my chapters are usually like 2,000 a piece. So it was rather short. And then I added an epilogue at the end, anyways, after she accepted it. So, but typically my books are like between 65 and 75,000
And where do you get
words.
inspiration for your inspiration for your stories? Does something pop up in the news or something you hear, or does it all come from in your head? Nothing inspired by outside in characters. Do you typically have characters in your mind from people you know and then tweak them, or is it everything from scratch pretty much?
That is a really great question. The very first story that I published and that I was writing that is When Hearts Collide, that became When Hearts Collide, was inspired by a memorial service I went to when I was in high school. Actually, I was actually 1 year out of high school and somebody had passed away because they fell asleep at the wheel. And so it was really I don't know, it just sparked this crazy idea in my head for a storyline. And um I didn't even know the person, but I went to the memorial because he went to our high school and like 150 people showed up at the memorial and they talked all about him. And so I got this crazy idea in my head to write a story. So I kind of wrote like a young adult sort of story. And then later on, 10 years later, I turned it more into like college age characters, and so it became more of a new adult or adult contemporary romance with the inspirational faith background. So that's always been a really strong influence in all of my books is my faith. I've been a Christian since I was 7, and then when I was 14 is when I renewed my relationship with God in a very strong way. So I've always had a very strong foundation of faith, and that plays a huge part in all of my novels. And all of my novels usually have some kind of scriptural theme to them. I usually try to attach a scripture to each and kind of keep that theme throughout, whether or not I write the scripture for the public to see or not. Not always, but and then I kind of go and research that theme based on the scriptures that I've kind of tacked onto my novel as I'm writing. So kind of helps build my relationship with God as I'm writing about specific themes. Like the first book I wrote was about forgiveness and redemption. The second one, A Worthy Heart, is exactly what the title says. It's more about like God's love, the difference between God's love, which is unconditional and eternal, versus love from fallible human beings. And then the third one was called Anchor My Heart, and that title came from the verse of Hebrews 6:19, which talks about we have this hope as an anchor to our soul. And so those were very strong influences in my novels. This fourth book didn't necessarily have a scripture tacked onto it, but the main character is a biblical studies professor. So that was fun trying to write that when I'm not a biblical studies major, but it was fun
So what did you,
working on that.
what kind, yeah, I have this, that's in the Trinity Lakes series. Is that another multi-author
Yeah,
series?
so the Trinity Lakes series is what No Matter How Far is part of. And
Okay.
that came out in August 2023. And there's several books out in that from different
That's the one
authors.
with Dylan, who is the biblical professor.
Yeah, so that character, I don't even know how I came with that character. That was just kind of random. Because I wanted to, this is a multi-author series with multiple authors from Australia and New Zealand, and I'm the American. So it was exciting
American.
to be invited. And
So
so
they
I
all,
wanted
they
to
all
write,
take place in Australia then, the stories.
they actually take place in the US, but
Okay.
they have a lot of characters from Australia in the stories, and so I really wanted to write an Australian character. And they say you don't have to, it's okay. And I was like, I really, really want to because you guys are all writing Australian characters, and most of their books have one Australian hero or heroine and then another American that come together in a romantic journey.
So is
So
your
I,
Jocelyn, your female character is Jocelyn, is she American?
yeah, she's from Washington, yeah.
Okay, so here you have
Washington State.
a biblical studies professor and you have a paramedic about to graduate with a master's in nursing, and you have to research all that. Where do you get most of
Yeah,
your,
definitely.
do you do a lot
Well,
online?
yeah, I do all my research online. Also, when it came to Dylan, who was Australian, just talking with the group of authors, picking up the nuances in language, and then I watched a lot of Bluey, which I love. My daughter fell in love with Bluey. It's a cartoon with New Zealand characters that are all New Zealand healers, and so I think they're actually different species of dogs as well, not just the main characters are the healer dogs. But it's so fun to listen to that show because then it kind of just gives me more like, okay, how do I write the dialogue authentically? It's just super fun listening to that show while I was writing this particular story. And then for the Jocelyn's um degree, I didn't really research a lot of her in terms of I researched what it takes to get a why you can get a BA in nursing and a master's in nursing. I didn't know that. But she was just in the beginning of the book is when she graduated. So it wasn't really like a big thing I had to research other than
She's a paramedic, right? So do you have her working where she's acting as a paramedic, or do you kind of get away from that?
yeah, I did a little bit of that. Yeah. A little bit of paramedic scenes, but I'm more focused on their relationship versus the scenes of there's a couple paramedic scenes where she's working, but not a lot. But
Well,
I
it
do
makes
have friends in nursing, so I wanted to make sure that I got the schooling correct for
right.
what it takes, how long it takes to get a nursing degree, what kind of degrees there are. So I have a couple nursing friends that kind of, and I did a lot of online research. We created our own small town as the group. The group itself developed this small town of Trinity Lakes. So it's a fictional town, so therefore we could kind of create our own schools and our own colleges and our own um everything in the town is our own imagination. So it was a little easier in that sense.
You don't have to stick to facts. You can create your own facts.
Yeah.
Nice. So now you said you have all of these things that you're trying to finish up. What about, do you have anything new on the horizon? Not something that you already have in the works, but something that you have to start from scratch. Do you have a plan for that? Or are you just kind of waiting to see how God brings something to you?
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely have been in the last few years been more of a planner, um, trying to plan out future series and things. But I absolutely think that God inspires a lot of my work because I have been stuck many times. My second novel, A Worthy Heart, I was stuck so far I couldn't finish it. And what helped me finish it were sermons, going to church consistently, listening to sermons, and applying those to my characters, applying those to the story, the plot, and that really helps fill in gaps or character flaws or character strengths and things like that that I can use to help finish a story. I don't know if I have anything new right now. I have a lot of unfinished stuff. I have some finished. I have several finished that I'm trying to get um, independently published. It just takes a lot of time, and I've been so busy with work and life and things like that. Especially with my when my dad passed away, my brother actually came from Arkansas to Nevada, and then he moved in with us a year later. So it was kind of crazy that, the whole situation. And then he stayed here for a year and a half. And then he we had inherited my parents' house, and so then he bought it out. So that process took a long time. And so just a lot of different things have kept me from starting new projects.
You can get
And I'd
busy.
like to get these other projects out before I really start working on new things. I have a lot of different things. It's kind of clogging my computer.
Well, good for you. It sounds like you have a way through though. You've written a lot and you have a lot on your plate. I would imagine as you're wrapping up some of these stories, other ones will start sparking for you so you can continue. Because it's obviously a dream of yours to be a writer. How does your husband, I'm curious, I have a very supportive husband. Like my husband said, if God put writing on your heart, why are you teaching? Why don't you quit teaching and try writing? I don't know how many husbands would say, give up your paycheck, give up your day job and see if you can make a start at this. How supportive is your husband with your writing?
It took him a very long time to be supportive.
Oh,
I think before when we first got married in 2008, I wrote different stories. I actually wrote a young adult action adventure, and that's somewhere in the back of my computer. But just I would be always writing, and so he kind of counted it as a hobby and not really a career. And then I published my first book, and then when he saw the book, literally physically saw the book, then he began to say, "What? Wow, this is actually happening." So he became more supportive, and my kids were really little, so it was easier to write at the time when I published my first two, and my third one was kind of already like I already had written it. I just had to go through the editing process. So that was a lot. It kind of jump started his more supportive nature. And now he's actually become even more supportive in the last few years, as I've been working on freelancing in terms of the newspaper that I work for. Because he told me the other day, because my newspaper publisher was um, coming to me with a proposition to write full time, and I was hesitant. And my husband said, "Why? This is what you love to do. Take that job." And I was like, "Are you sure?" Because it's a lot different than normal, but it's still writing, which I love in general. So I think he's definitely more supportive than he was. And I've learned something throughout the last, when did I publish? 2018. I've learned something in the last, um 6, 7 years, that it is really important to take care of your marriage,
Absolutely.
even when you need to finish books. I have been blessed to not have like massive deadlines. The only really, really tight deadlines were proofreading deadlines, which I hate. I hate proofreading deadlines so much. But that was really the only really tight deadlines I've ever had. So I haven't had like, but I've been in spots where I'm just like, oh, I'm so inspired. I'm gonna sit here and write for 3 hours, because I just can't, like, it's all in my head and I have to get it out. But I think it's really important to take time with your family and your husband or spouse in general to make sure that you're not ignoring them, even when you're feeling super inspired to finish a book.
Well, it's
Deadlines are different. Yeah.
God family work, right? God family
Yeah, I
work.
definitely think family is super important. And in the beginning, I think because he wasn't super supportive, I mean, he just felt like it was a big hobby, and he felt sort of neglected. And so after, publishing the first novel, he became more supportive in that sense and wasn't taking it personally anymore. But I felt like at the same time, I also had to work on finding time to spend with him and away from the kids. And so it's really important as a writer to balance family and not just seclude myself in the back room and write for hours and hours.
I think
So
that's a great place right there to end our interview, because I think that's really right there, godly words of wisdom. Because so many people will put their work, and even if it's a ministry work, I know people that are in ministry, but the ministry is overwhelming, and then they end up neglecting their families, and that's not what God calls us to do. I mean, even ministry is work. I mean, God first, absolutely, but that doesn't mean your whole focus is on your ministry work, because that's still work. So I think that's a really good advice right there. So I know, Sarah Beth, we're going to have you back again in June, right? When your next book releases.
yeah, so my next story for the Trinity Lakes Romance Collection is called Yesterday, Now, and Always. And it is like most of my books also have some kind of musical influence. Anchor My Heart also had um a main character who was a worship leader who played guitar. And my Yesterday, Now, and Always, the title was inspired by a song, and so that was strong on my heart. I just heard the title and I was like, that's exactly what I need to write about. So that comes out in the end of June, and I have a newsletter on my website where people can sign up, and I'm going to be sending out launch team invites, advanced reader invites, and so on. And my website is just my name, Sara, no H,
I'm going to put
sarabethwilliams.com.
I'm going to put it in the show notes. I'll have your website
Excellent.
in the show notes. I'll have this last book that we are talking about in the Trinity Lake
Mhm.
series. I'll have a blurb in there and where people
Okay.
can buy that. So I will put all that in the show notes so everybody will know exactly how they can connect with you.
Very good. Thank you so much. This has
You're
been so
welcome.
fun.
Well, it's been fun for me too. I look forward to meeting up again in June and highlighting your next book. So thank you for taking the time. I know it was a stress for you with all of you have to do. So I appreciate you finding the time to do this, Sarah Beth. And we wish you the best of luck, and we will check in with you in a few months.
Thank you so much.
Bye.